We've already looked at a whole heap of different online business models, purely just to give you an indication of the many different ways people can make money online by selling their goods and services. But how many different sorts of models exist? Which one do you choose? The answer might surprise you, but there are millions of them. So that makes it impossible to choose just one. Each business should have, at its core, its own proprietary business model. A model that has been specially crafted for the particular circumstances and situation of that business. So that's what we want to do here. And that is to introduce you to a very clever method of designing your own business model, using something called the Business Model Canvas, or BMC. And by using the BMC, you can quickly draw up a possible business model for your business, with a bit of practice in under about 30 minutes. You can quickly work out what needs to be tested and how. And you can quickly test it and retest if needed to determine viability. And then you can expand on it or go back to the drawing board. And it can take into account all of the important factors you can come up with that are relevant to your particular situation. So you can either fail fast, if needed, and at minimal expense, or you can move forward more confidently, knowing that you've got all the I's crossed and the T's dotted. No, the T's crossed and the I's dotted, that's right. Sorry. And this lean startup format is very useful if you want to quickly explain or start your business, or if your business is fairly simple, or if you think that your business plan might regularly change and be refined over time. Compared to the traditional detailed business plan, the lean startup format is ideal for those of us looking at quickly deciding whether our idea can actually and realistically be converted into something a lot more concrete. It certainly shouldn't take a lot of time and effort to produce, as it uses only a handful of key elements to describe your business. It's a high-level overview, a drone's view of your business if you like, which means it is fairly fast to write. And, if you want to, it can also form an excellent base for further development using a more traditional business plan. So perhaps if you were looking for finance, lenders and investors will usually want to see that extra detail in order to make their decision. Introducing the Business Model Canvas, or BMC. This is one of the oldest and most well-known versions of a lean startup template. The Business Model Canvas was designed by Alexander Osterwalder of Strategyzer and was developed in 2008. The BMC is a large visual chart, often even wall-sized, used for developing and documenting business models. Since 2008, new canvases for specific niches have appeared, and the techniques have been adopted by over 5 million people. The BMC can take into account all of the things you have no control over, i.e. outside environmental influences, as well as all of the things you can control. So let's start with the things that you do have control over. The BMC categorises the processes and internal activities of any business into 9 separate categories. Each process or activity is a different building block used in the creation of the product or the service sold by the business. Once complete, the BMC provides a nice visual breakdown of the major considerations impacting that business. It makes it very clear where the organisation is going with its business model. So the canvas allows us to very quickly look at each of the building blocks and its relationship to all the others and determine how and whether changing that relationship can also increase possibly efficiency or effectiveness and so on. These internal building blocks are front-end building blocks and back-end building blocks. So we're going to look at the front-end ones first. The first one of these is the customer segments building block. Customer segments are the target audience for your products and services, and you could serve one or several different segments. Where multiple customer segments are possible, I think it might be best to initially develop separate models for each customer type and then merge them later if it doesn't become all too confusing. The second front-end building block is value propositions. That's why people will buy and use your products. How you differentiate yourself from your competitors. Why customers will buy from you and not someone else. Here you seek to solve customer problems and satisfy customer needs with unique value propositions. The third front-end building block are channels, and channels describe how the value propositions are delivered to your customer segments through communication, distribution and sales channels. The fourth front-end customer building block are customer relationships. These are established and maintained with each customer segment. And the fifth front-end building block, the all-important one, is the revenue streams. What income is generated from the value propositions that you've successfully offered to your customers? Okay, now we'll take a look at the back-end building blocks, where number 6 is the key resources. These are the assets that are required to create, offer and deliver the product or service and create value for the customer. Number 7, the key activities back-end building block. These are the key activities that need to be performed to create and deliver your value propositions. Number 8, key partnerships. Some activities may need to be outsourced and some resources may be acquired from outside the enterprise. Who do you need to partner with? And number 9, well, these are the main cost structures, all the costs that are required to create and deliver the product. And naturally, well, the outcome you want is for the income stream, the revenue, to be greater than the cost so that we make some profit. So there are the front and back end building blocks, and of course we already mentioned that there are some things that you have no control over, and these are the external building blocks, all the factors that are external to your business. And the big picture is that in the big bad world you're building your business in, it's full of all sorts of things beyond your control. This is the environment in which your business is going to operate every day. Now, just because you can't control these factors doesn't mean that you can't account for them in your model. And if you do, then you'll find that you're able to respond quickly to both disruptive threats and possible opportunities when and if they occur. These external building blocks can include, number 10, market forces, the key customer issues in your arena, such as growing and shrinking segments, customer switching costs, changing jobs, pains and gains, and more. They can include number 11, key trends that are shaping your arena, such as technology innovations, regulatory constraints, social trends. External building blocks also include number 12, industry forces, key actors in your space, such as your existing competitors, and new and rising competitors, rising value chain actors, new or fading technology providers, and lots more. And the final external building block, number 13, macroeconomic forces. Macro trends such as global market conditions, access to resources, high and low commodity prices, and more. Now we'll come back to all of these with some specific examples of each factor shortly. The key thing is to try to account for any significant ones in your own BMC. So how do you fill this all in? Well, your canvas is a large blank workspace with 9 areas on it, to which you can add important sticky notes. Simple. And it's best if the canvas can be drawn on a wall or on a very large sheet of paper, and that each sticky note you write relates to only one item or idea at a time. Then each note can be placed in the right area, or moved around, or removed if it later becomes irrelevant. And if there isn't an immediate obvious spot for a sticky note, then simply put it off to the side to be considered later. So the idea is to write a sticky note for each suggestion you brainstorm. That's right, we're doing another brainstorm here. And don't combine multiple suggestions on one sticky note. It's 1 point per note. Now, it really doesn't matter where you start, as technically you can start anywhere. In fact, in a brainstorm, the random flows of ideas or suggestions that come up as you brainstorm a blank canvas Could mean that you are sticking notes up all over the place, so don't worry too much about that. Now obviously, if you're trying to kick off a new idea, you could probably start with the value proposition surrounding your idea and attempt to design a business model around that. The trouble with that approach is your strong emotional attachment to that idea in the first place, and that could limit your thinking somewhat as you try to make it fit together to keep the original idea intact. And remember, most ideas, however, are meant to be just a starting point for further investigation and research. They get refined somewhat as all of this happens before the final product is decided and created. So I would suggest that you actually start with the customer segments, or avatars, sound familiar, that you have identified previously, and then work on your value proposition. And the correct mapping out of these two building blocks, customer segments and value proposition, is essential to the whole process. So much so, in fact, that Strategyzer developed a totally separate value proposition canvas based on just these two blocks. And that's discussed in another lesson shortly. Now, if you want to initially just test an idea, then your purpose here would be to design something based around only the major facts that you know and the major assumptions you have made. Suggests that you could even use different coloured sticky notes for facts versus assumptions. Remember what we said at the start of this lesson. By using the BMC, you can quickly draw up a possible business model for your business. You can work out what needs to be tested and how. You can test it and retest it if needed to determine viability. And then, once you've done several iterations of testing, then it's time to either expand on it and do that more in-depth research that we talked about before, and from that develop a more complex model which includes all the results that you've discovered and get into more of the whole nitty-gritty stuff, or go back to a blank canvas and construct a different variation, or go back even further and look at totally different keywords and niches. But for now, let's just move on and discuss all of these building blocks in a lot more detail over the next few lessons. And the next one will look closely at the front-end building blocks. Please note that parts of this presentation are used under a Creative Commons license issued by Strategyzer.com.